Hello, you're watching Shalom World News. I'm Dana Villa from Chicago, USA. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. At least 190 people are now officially confirmed dead in Malawi after Tropical Storm Freddy tore across southern Africa for the second time in a month. Most of the deaths included dozens of youngsters in Blantyre, the commercial center of Malawi. The government has proclaimed a state of emergency in 10 southern districts that have been mostly severely impacted by the storm. Rescuers are searching for survivors buried in the mud using shovels. Medical charity Doctors Without Borders said that more than 40 children were pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. The government's disaster relief agency said more than 20,000 people have been displaced. The death toll is expected to rise as some areas remain cut off because of relentless rain and fierce winds. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, or the FCDO, has launched a new initiative to tackle gender inequality around the world with the use of over £200 million of taxpayers' money for the program that supports abortion and fund pro-choice campaigns in Africa. International Planned Parenthood Federation and MSI Reproductive Choices are the organizations responsible for carrying out the program. According to the polling, only a small portion of the public supports using taxpayer money in this way, with 65% of British citizens opposing funding abortions abroad. The use of taxpayer funds for abortion abroad by the government is outrageous, according to Right to Life UK spokesperson Catherine Robinson. In addition to the rising cost of living, abortion is harmful to both women and unborn children. She said the myth that women's well-being is inherently incompatible with that of their children is a lie that the government is actively spreading in developing nations. The theme of this year's National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, which was held in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, March 14, was ongoing assaults on human dignity. Ukrainian Greek Catholic Archbishop Boris Gudziak highlighted the human cost of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and how much is our dignity worth, Gudziak questioned in his keynote speech. He said Ukrainians are willing to devote their lives to the land, justice, truth, and dignity that God grants us. While Ukraine faces Russian aggression, Gudziak praised the American Church for its assistance and pleaded for more prayers. New statistics show that in 2022, 2.96 Belgians died by euthanasia. That is almost 10% more than in 2021. According to a press statement from the Belgian government, there has been a general trend toward more euthanasia deaths. Nonetheless, the vast majority of the requests were made by Dutch nationals, which is about 70%, and followed by French nationals. The majority of those asking for euthanasia are older than 60, and the group was made up of seniors ranging in age from 80 to 89. The number of foreigners coming to Belgium to request euthanasia has also risen. French people especially find their way to their neighboring country to end their lives. The law in Belgium does not stipulate that the person receiving euthanasia must be a citizen of Belgium. The state sports governing body announced on Monday, March 13, that a Vermont Christian school will not be allowed to compete in the future competitions after it forfeited a game in the girls' state basketball playoffs because its rival had a transgender student on the team's roster. The Vermont Principals Association, or VPA, ruled that the Mid-Vermont Christian School had violated policies and is ineligible to participate in future tournaments. Head of school Vicky Fogg said in a statement that, quote, "We intend to appeal the decision. Canceling our membership is not a solution and does not do anything with the deal of the real issue of safety and fairness facing women's sports in our beloved state. We urge the VPA to reconsider its policies and balance the rights of every athlete in the state," end quote. A total of 1,173 young people received the sacrament of confirmation in the Diocese of Myitkyina, the capital of Kachin State in northern Myanmar. Cardinal Charles Mongbo, who administered the sacrament, said, quote, "This means being willing to suffer for the faith and face the insults and wounds of others," end quote. With confirmation, said the cardinal, the baptized person receives the gift of the Holy Spirit. The cardinal underlined that today the Lord confirms them in faith, which will help them live through the hardship, precariousness, and suffering around them. Pope Francis sent a letter to Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, spiritual leader of Iraqi Shiites, in which he recalls their meeting 2 years ago during the papal visit in Iraq and encouraged him to promote fraternity among believers as a concrete response to today's challenges. In the letter, the Holy Father commended the Grand Ayatollah for his commitment to those who suffered persecution, preserving the sacredness of life and the importance of the unity of the Iraqi people. The letter was written on the second anniversary of the Holy Father's visit to Iraq. On the 20th anniversary of the American invasion in Iraq on March 2003, the Chaldean Patriarch of Baghdad, Cardinal Luis Rafael Sacco, decried the instability, sectarian violence, and widespread corruption in Iraq. Cardinal Sacco said despite modest improvement in the last 2 decades, Iraq remains scarred and most of the issues are still mostly unresolved. The nation struggles to maintain territorial integrity, social cohesion, and institutional unity after dramatic events linked to the Islamic State and the street protests, the political class. Saddam Hussein was overthrown by U.S. and British forces on March 20, 2003 through the Operation Iraqi Freedom. This has led to the spike on the institutional anarchy and terrorism, which had only been partially contained in the previous era. The cardinal highlighted current events in the nation and the fallacy of a democratic and free operation. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin reflects on the ongoing war in Ukraine and says the Holy See is trying to reactivate peace negotiations. He was speaking to reporters on the sidelines of the launch of the book The Atlas of Francis, Vatican and International Politics by Jesuit priest Father Antonio Spadaro. According to the Secretary of State, Pope Francis wants to visit both Moscow and Kiev because he believes that service to peace can only be done if he manages to see the two presidents, Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. Cardinal Parolin noted that the Holy See has a different vision than individual governments because it has a universalist vision and a distinct focus for pursuing peace. Catholics in the U.S. will be able to help suffering people around the world by giving to the Catholic Relief Services collection on the weekend of March 18 and 19. The drive is sponsored by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and held in dioceses across the country. The Catholic Relief Services collection supports Catholic Church organizations that carry out international relief and solidarity efforts. Programs include relief and resettlement for victims of persecution, war and natural disasters, development projects to improve living conditions of the poor, peace and reconciliation, work for people suffering from violence, and advocacy on behalf of the powerless. Persecution of Christians and other religious minorities by extremist groups in the Middle East has forced families to flee their homes with only a few possessions or resources. Funds from the collection provide material and spiritual support to refugees across the globe. As Sri Lanka reels from its worst economic crisis in decades, Cardinal Malcolm Ranjit of Colombo has called for the resignation of the parliamentarians and the opportunity for people to elect a new government. During a press conference held at the Archbishop's house, the prelate condemned the political stalemate following the postponement of local elections in the South Asian country. According to the Sri Lankan government, the elections initially set on March 9 was postponed by the Election Commission due to a lack of funding. The prelate said as the ruling class had brought such a bad scenario, lawmakers and ministers should step down and allow the public to choose a new government. Cardinal Ranjit urged action against parliamentarians whom he claimed were undermining the judiciary's authority by postponing the elections. The Polish Postal Service released a special stamp to commemorate Pope Francis's 10th pontifical anniversary. At the stamp's unveiling on March 13 in Warsaw, Archbishop Salvatore Pennacchio, the Apostolic Nuncio to Poland, stated that mercy and hope were the characteristics of the Holy Father's decade-long tenure. The Apostolic Nunciature in Poland closely collaborated on the initiative to honor Pope Francis. The Apostolic Nuncio noted that the 10th anniversary pontificate is a significant occasion for both the Universal Church and the Church in Poland, and wherever the Holy Father goes, he brings support, comfort, and hope for a better future. Acclaimed Polish photographer Grzegorz Gaszka captured the image for the commemorative stamp in Rome. It features a profile of a smiling Pope Francis. The Holy Father's cassock is shown in white against the red upholstery of an armchair, referring to the white and red of Poland's flag. Mirando al Cielo, Looking at Heaven, a Spanish film written and directed by Antonio Pelaez that tells the story of a young Mexican martyr, Saint Jose Sanchez del Rio, will hit U.S. theaters on April 18. The film depicts the life of a 13-year-old martyr who led the Cristero Revolt in response to the Masonic government's ruthless application of the anti-Catholic provisions of the 1917 Mexican Constitution. The movie stars 13-year-old Julian Fidalgo along with Luis Javier Cavazos, Estela Cano, Alexis Orozco, and Marco Orozco, among others. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us tomorrow. In the meantime, you can visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.